John Sullivan is my name from Cuffesgrange, Foróige.
Nice to meet you, John.
One man said to us at the time we were starting off, he said, I'll give you 6 months, nothing ever succeeds around here. And you've been every 6 months back now, and if you hold out it.
So, where did you first hear about the work you've kind of been doing for your life now?
Well, I read this article on the Independent about this organisation, Macron and Tuha, and just I thought that's a great idea. We had nothing like that around Cuffesgrange when I was growing up. And as it so happens, I was a member of the Legion of Mary at the time, Maria Annunziata Cuffesgrange. And it was just a coincidence, I suppose. At that time, Bishop Birch came to Moscow, and he drew up a list of what he described as works of service that the Presidios of the Legion of Mary could do, and one of them was Macron. And we got it going from that, And then after a while we went over to the ICA hall in Seven Houses. And we actually own that hall now, which is a great boom because we can go off on a Friday evening and leave things as they are, and if you're doing a project, you just return to it the next week,
Did you have any training or anything like that for your leadership?
Not really, no. A few people came from the national headquarters. Macron was sponsored by the ICA, WIlkie and Macron Ferma. And it went on like that for a number of years until it became an autonomous organisation,
And what other activities would you do in the hall itself,
Actually, they'd run a meeting, you see. They'd learned how to run a meeting, and in fact, some years ago, a woman told me about her son. He was working in Aer Lingus, and he got on to some committee, and he said, when he came home, he said, I knew how to run a meeting. He says, I learned to run a meeting with John Sullivan. So, there were many more like him that could say the same thing, And then I remember another woman, poor woman was fighting cancer at the time, a battle that she didn't win. And there was some function anyway, and she would have been at it, and I met her afterwards, and she said, she apologised for not being there. She said, I wasn't able to be there. And she said, you reared my children. She said, I always knew they were safe when they were with you. And that can be said about so many different youth groups around the country. That's so very important, especially now, and especially when we look back on the terrible things that happened, the abuse and that, that if we can say that about any organisation is something very important. And then, of course, there's a grant coming now in more recent times from the Department of Education because they appreciate the value of Macron or Foróige, as it is now. Mm-hmm. The name was changed in 1983, and the chairman of the National Council proposed to change the name, and I seconded it. I was born in 1939, so that means I was a child during the war years, and things were very scarce. Both my parents smoked, and I'd be going to school, I'd be given the price of 10 cigarettes and went to Nell Brennan for 10 cigarettes. Where would I get 10 cigarettes? If you'd open a package, you'd get three of them out of it, because they were scarce, and so was everything else, Sweets were very rare. Fruit. I remember somebody brought oranges to school, and we were amazed. And there was family then, the Comfort, the Lord Mercy, they're all dead now. And they got a parcel from America, and they brought the little finger biscuits, and they shared them out with us all, And I suppose that was the kind of thing that went on then.
So, what kind of activities did you kind of do in the early days, and how many young people were involved?
There wasn't a huge crowd until we moved over to Burn Church because it's given a better chance of getting to it. And then the Lord Mercy and Michael Cleary became the National Director of Foróige, and he was a deep thinking man. He did a lot of research. Michael Cleary, the Lord Mercy, was always reading a book pertaining to the work he was doing. They say, there's an old saying, a man is never old till he stops learning. Michael Cleary was never old. He was always learning. And he brought the organisation a long, long way, and he developed it, and, he helped so many leaders around the country, that he did a huge service to this country.
And how did it help young people, do you think?
Well, sure, it created a framework for them to work within, and they were more focused on what they were doing because of this programs that were developed. Kevin Gleeson is now the club leader. I stepped down as club leader a good many years ago because they're trying to hand it on to somebody else, I suppose one of the things different is the mobile phone. We don't allow the mobile phones because actually we had a problem developed back a couple of years ago with mobile phone, with Snapchat, and they were exchanging messages and they weren't all as cordial, and there was a woeful re-raw developed over it, and Kevin got an awful time over it. It wasn't Kevin's fault. He didn't know what they were doing with their phones no more than any of us, or couldn't. We wouldn't be allowed to do so. For that we banned the phones because when you see them and they're texting each other across the room, they wouldn't go over and have a chat. Some of them are not able to talk anymore because it's all electronic, And it's a pity. Because there's a man I knew that he was suffering with depression, and there was a friend of his, and I was friendly with both of them, and he was telling me about him. And he was talking about he going into the mental hospital. He's getting too fond of that place. I don't like it. But luckily, he overcome his difficulties with depression. I met him one time. I was talking to him, and he brought down the subject himself. He introduced, talked to me about it and everything else. You know what he said? I find the best thing of all. What I'm doing now, having a chat. Foróige run a huge lot of youth centres around the country. And they look after a lot of different types of clubs and everything. It's not just what our group would be referred to as mainline Foróige, the ordinary clubs. But they also run a huge amount of different projects around the country for different bodies.
And facilities.
And yes, exactly, yeah. They won some even for the garage Geoghegan.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was the most important thing in the development of Foróige from the time you started, when it was just probably getting off the ground, to the time it is here now? What did you see as the one thing that you were most proud of seeing happening in terms of Foróige?
Being recognised for its work, I'd say, by all the different bodies, and being supported by the Department of Education. The Department of Education sees it as a valuable tool in the education of young people.
So would you recommend volunteering?
I would, yes.
Why?
No, look at it this way. If all the volunteers stopped tomorrow morning, what kind of a country would we have? You'd have no GA, you'd have no soccer, you'd have no rugby. Holy God, you'd have no... there's so many different organisations that are doing so much on a voluntary basis. This country would be terribly impoverished.
And what would you say to me if I wanted to become a volunteer within Foróige, or a young person wanted to become a volunteer? Well, what do you think I would get out of it, and why should I do it?
Well, I will tell you, the more you put in, the more you'll get out of it. You'll be putting in, but you'll be getting a lot out of it yourself, You'll feel that you're doing something that's going to live on long after you're gone, I would say to a young person that there are things in this world that you alone will do and no one else will do it. And make sure that the world is a better place because you did it.
And what did you get out of it?
I felt that I had to change things in Cuffesgrange and made life better for a lot of young people, create something for them that they could do, and they could feel they were part of a club, and they could make a contribution to it. I got that out of it. That wasn't there when I was growing up. And she's there now, and so to be there, please God, when I'm gone.
Yeah. So how do you kind of like the father to a lot of children then, really? Well, the grandfather probably now.
That's what one fellow said. He was a former member. He said, John Sullivan, he says he reared an awful lot of children, and he's never a child of his own.
And what did I hear about Bachelor of the Year, John?
I won that in Kilkenny, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You're proud of that?
Actually, I was a bit of a politician for a while. I went out with posters and I was talking to people and I put posters all over the place, and I managed to get enough people in to put me over there. It was one for the Meals on Wheels, it was a fundraiser for them. So the more people that got in at a $5 a piece, of course, the more money they made for the Meals on Wheels.
If I was the Minister of Education, I said to you, is there any reason why I should be continuing funding for Foróige when we have youth centres and things like that? Well, what's different about Foróige? What's different?
Well, it's the structure of it, and it's the years of experience that's gone into developing the different programs and that. There are so many experienced people in the organisation working as professionals. We have a professional panel of people there, like Rose, for instance, and people at headquarters and everything else. That to be a pity to throw away all that experience, And I would say to the Minister that every young person is like a blank canvas. that we want a potential masterpiece. We don't know what they're going to be or where they're going, but we have to do whatever we can to help them to be what they might be.